Hello, everyone. Welcome to my Genius Game recap for episode 2. Really excited to recap this episode. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really fun episode. It was a bit easier to follow, I think, than the first one. So I'm hoping that people who watched it are starting to feel a bit better about the show and see the potential that we have. Thank you to everyone who watched the recap video for the first episode. It's got over 500 views on YouTube, which is crazy. That's like almost as much as the actual show has at this point. um, but no, that's wild. Like 500 people watching something I made is really cool. And I've got some really great feedback from it. So yeah, I hope you continue liking these recaps. It's been a really fun experience for me just to think about what happened on the show and being able to remember everything and then being able to share it all with you guys. So to start with, really exciting that after the first 2 episodes of Genius Game, all of the women who are on the cast have won something. So we've got Pasha and Allison who've won the first 2 death matches, and then Charlotte won the first main match, and then Pasha, Indy, and Beex won the second main match. So the women on the cast are killing it. I'm really happy with that. My whole strategy coming in was to basically team up with all the women, have really good relationships with the women, and then boot some of these guys out. So we'll see how that plays out for me, but so far so good. A couple questions that I had from people. Folks have been wondering like what it's like seeing myself on TV, and that has been really interesting. So I used to be really self-conscious about my voice because I think sometimes there's sort of like affectation to your voice that you have sometimes as a gay person. And so sometimes when I used to go back and hear my voice, I would be almost like disgusted, like really, really not like my voice. But actually, in watching back like the last recap and seeing myself on TV, I actually really like my voice. And I think my voice sounds really nice. So that's been really nice actually, because I'm not used to feeling positive or confident about very much that's related to me at all, actually. And also like seeing myself on the show has been interesting because I've gotten a bit more fit since we filmed the show. So there's times where I see myself and I'm like, oh, I look a bit chubby there, and it's nice to know that I'm a little bit fitter now than I was. But yeah, overall it's been a really nice experience actually. Like I actually don't have the kind of insecurities I thought I would, like seeing myself on TV. Other people were asking about the filming schedule, and I don't want to go too much into detail about that because I don't think we're really meant to talk about too much behind the scenes stuff. But basically for episode 2, we would get to the set in the morning, and I'll speak in a moment actually about coming into the set, because the order that you come in is determined by the producers, and it's actually a really important aspect of the strategy actually and the gameplay. But once everyone comes into the atrium, we then basically have a small period of time where we can go off in the different rooms and just have chats with people. So we don't have a main match to play. There's nothing going on except being able to talk to each other. And they filmed all of that, of course. And yeah, for the second episode, I remember we all basically went into the lounge and just kind of sat on those sofas, like in different groups, and just chatted with each other. And then people would get pulled out of those rooms to go film their little confessionals, their confessional interviews. And we just did that for a little bit in the morning, which it was really nice because after day 1, it was quite stressful, that first episode. And we really hadn't gotten to know each other very well at all. So having that time before we actually found out about Zombie Game was really nice to have some chats with people. Then yeah, so we broke for lunch and then played the main match, and then we took a break for dinner and then came back and did the death match. So I think like for episode 2, maybe like the death match was happening at like 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. So yeah, it was like the schedule was pretty grueling. Like it was an all day long thing to film the episode. The other thing I wanted to say, I kind of missed this, I think, in the last recap. that I did. So when Paul and Pasha were doing the same or different deathmatch, I was in the lounge with everyone else, obviously. And for me, like one of the most informative and interesting things that happened that whole day of the first episode was watching the other players in the lounge, watching Paul and Pasha play the deathmatch. Because I think you saw in the show, like there's some clips of us giving answers. So we could see the board with the shapes in the lounge. And I was sort of like sat back a little bit and listening and watching because I knew from watching the Korean show that Same or Different is like the quintessential deathmatch game. And that in the season 1 of the Korean show, that deathmatch was in the finale. That was one of the games that the final 2 contestants played to see who would win. So I was really paying attention to who was good at Same or Different. And there were definitely some people who stood out as people who were being really clever and really good at that game. Like they were firing out matches all over the place. So that was actually, from a strategic perspective, like really, really interesting. I was actually more paying attention to the other players in the lounge than I was Paul and Pasha, because no offense to Paul or Pasha, but especially in the beginning when they were sort of struggling with the game, I felt like the more interesting thing that was happening was actually trying to pay attention to the other competitors to see who was good at that particular game. Cool. So let's get into episode 2. So when I got to the set that morning, went into my dressing room and saw my sweater. I was really excited to wear my sweater. I've gotten so many compliments on this sweater, like probably more than any other article of clothing that I have. So I was really excited that I made it long enough into episode 2 that I could wear this on the show. And as I was getting ready, I got a visit from one of the story producers. And this was really interesting because they were just asking us, like, how are you feeling about the game? Like, what are you going to do today? What's your strategy going into today? And I knew that the whole purpose for that visit was basically that they were trying to get a sense of what storylines might be happening today. Like, for example, if I tell them I'm really pissed off at Allison, like I hate Allison because of something she did yesterday, and I'm going to get my revenge today. Like they need to know that so they can keep tabs on all these little relationships with the players. So they want to know exactly what we're thinking about everyone. But I also had a feeling that part of what was said to the story producers would help decide what order we would go into the set when we would start filming. So I basically told the story producer that my plan for episode 2 was what I told you guys in the last video, that I wanted to work with Bedalia, and I would basically work on Indy, Charlotte, and Pasha and building a relationship with them, and that Bedalia could work with Scott, Ken, and Amani and try to build a relationship with them. So that was my plan, and that we would sort of leverage those relationships together, and we would sort of infiltrate that majority group of 6 from the first episode. So when we went down to the set, they lined us up outside the door to get into the room. And actually, Bedalia and I were first. And so I was like, okay, this is awesome. Like, I'm going to get a chance to walk into the set with just me and Bedalia. We can talk and strategize, and no one else is there. Like, that's actually a golden opportunity because we didn't get that much time to talk to each other, like outside of playing the games. But because I was one of the first people onto the set on episode 1 with Pasha, I didn't know if people standing outside the door to the atrium could hear what we were saying inside. So basically, I didn't know like if there were speakers in the ceiling or something, and that you could hear everyone outside of the set, like all the crew could hear what we were saying inside. I didn't know because I had yet to have the experience of other people being on set, being filmed, and I was behind the door. And so I remember saying to one of the production people, I was like, I need to have this strategic conversation with Bedalia, but like, can everyone else hear me? Like, I don't know. And he was like, I think he didn't understand what I was asking. And so basically what happened is they brought out these little noise canceling headphones that they would give us while we filmed the episode. So like, for example, in Zombie Game, like once they reveal the results of each round, we would all put on the headphones and we weren't allowed to talk to anyone. It was called going on ice. And then we would each get called to do a confessional interview one at a time. So they brought out those headphones and basically put them on everyone else who wasn't Bedalia and I when we walked in. And so because of that, I felt comfortable, like I can actually talk to Bedalia now and talk strategy, and the people outside aren't going to hear us. It turns out that wasn't necessary because they wouldn't have been able to hear us anyway, but I didn't know that. And I was you guys saw in the episode, like I'm just a person who's a very worried, anxious, like paranoid kind of person in life and in games. And I definitely didn't want to like go into the set and have this moment of strategy. And it turns out everyone else can hear me. I was kind of thinking about in Big Brother Canada when Aika was outside shredding everyone's letters and like talking shit about everyone, but actually everyone inside could see her and hear her. Like I didn't want something like that to totally blow up my game. So Bedalia and I went in first, and I told him this plan that I had, that I was going to work with the women, he would work with the men. And he was like, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I'm 100% on board with this plan. So that was really awesome. So they didn't show it, but Bedalia and I had hatched this plan. And that's why in the Zombie Game, I teamed up with the women and Bedalia was teaming up with the guys. So from a social perspective, I was really trying to lay the groundwork to have relationships or a connection with as many of the players as possible. So I just want to mention like 2 of the backstories that they got to before we introduced the main match. They finally showed Allison's backstory, and I'm completely obsessed, 100% obsessed with Allison's backstory. She's outside with her typewriter and her cup of coffee. It is so Murder, She Wrote coded that my little gay heart was like doing backflips because I love Murder, She Wrote. I said in the first episode that she was reminding me of Jessica Fletcher, who's Angela Lansbury's character in Murder, She Wrote. And this whole backstory, like whatever producer came up with this is 100% a Murder, She Wrote fan. Like that's exactly what they were going for. And I just loved it. I also really loved Amanfi's backstory. So Amanfi, like when I got to know him, we had a chat this day on episode 2 before the main match. And he was just like really, really humble. Like Amanfi wasn't really telling us like all of his accolades. So of course we knew that there was reasons why everybody was there to compete in the Genius Game. But I would say like Beex was like secretive. There were some people who were secretive and weren't really giving things away. But I got the impression from Amanfi that it was a bit, maybe some of that, like being secretive, but it was also about being humble. Because actually, even after the whole show was over with, I still actually didn't really know some of this information that was in his backstory. And it was really nice that he gets this moment to tell people his accomplishments and his achievements, because it's so impressive. Like all the A stars that he's had and all these scholarships and his athletic and academic performance. Like, so I'm really glad that we got that backstory. And it actually, I can see why they did it, because Amanfi for me was like a star of this episode. Like his gameplay and his moves, so entertaining, really fun to see. When we get to the main match and David Tennant comes up on the screen and he says something about people turning undead, like you can see me over in the corner and I'm already reacting. When I watched the episode with my friends last night, one of them was like, they must have like a whole bank of shots that are just you reacting to things with like the shocked face. So I knew that Zombie Game was coming. And when he actually said Zombie Game, this was my face. And that is the face of someone who knows that before the main match rules are even explained, that I'm about to win this main match. Because when I hosted a Genius Game for my friends in 2018, one of the games we played was a Zombie Game. And I had little glass bottles that I filled up with their antidotes. I obviously knew this game from the Korean show. I knew the strategy. And that morning, I knew that there was 10 people left in the game. So in my hotel room, I was looking through my binder about what 10-player games have been done in the main match before. And obviously Zombie Game was in the running. And so I was like, that would be a great one for them to do because it's a hidden role thing. It's sort of like Traders. So I was definitely anticipating Zombie Game could come up, and I was really familiar with the strategy because I had just read my notes. So when they announced the game and explained the rules, we were all sort of having a chat about what we thought about the game, and almost everyone was like, I really want to be a zombie. Like, I think it's really good to be a zombie to start with. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, I really want to be a human because then I can do this whole bubble strategy. So I was really happy that I ended up drawing a human card. That was really good luck for me because I definitely had a solid strategy for what to do as a human. Things would have been a lot more tricky if I was a zombie. The other thing that I got really lucky with, actually more so than drawing a human, was that I was the second person into the diary room to draw my secret role. And I remember I went in and got my card, and then I came out, and we weren't on ice, so we didn't have the headphones on. Like sometimes in between rounds, we had the headphones on and we weren't allowed to talk to anyone. So I remember I started talking to people and I was like, wait a minute, are we allowed to talk like about the game? Because not everyone has their card yet. And no one said anything. So I just kept talking. And that's when I said to everyone, I've got this bubble strategy. I need 3 other humans. We're going to team up. We're going to win the game. And basically, I think that the producers like maybe didn't anticipate that someone like me would be so aggressive like from the very beginning. Because really, I think that we should have been put on ice and basically we should have been separated and everyone got their role. And then we shouldn't have been able to talk with each other until everyone drew their card. And the reason is because I had already had my card as a human. So every person who went after me, I got to watch them go in, watch them come out, and some of them would just immediately come up to me and start talking. So I could get an immediate read on people about whether they were a human or a zombie. And so I can't remember the exact order that that people came in, but basically at one point, like Pasha came over to me and I could just tell from her face when she was saying that she was a human, that she was telling the truth. Like I didn't actually think she would be capable of lying about her role without me being able to tell. It was just really obvious to me. And Indy as well came over to me. And there was just something about the look in her eye and what she was saying to me. I just believed her. Like I trusted her. And then at one point, Charlotte came over, and this was still in the atrium. And Charlotte said something to me and Indy, and I can't remember her exact quote, but she referred to the humans as they. Something like this, basically. She was referring to the humans in a way that made me think that she was not one of them. And that's why very shortly after me, Indy, and Charlotte went into the lounge, like you see in the picture, and we were asking who a zombie was, and I said, I think Charlotte is one. That was why, because Charlotte, from the second she came out the dealer room, it made that comment, and I thought she was a zombie for sure. The fact that she admitted to being a zombie in that moment straight away was absolutely huge. It was huge for her game and her strategy, and it was really huge for me and my game and my strategy, because I really wanted to work with Indy and Charlotte, but I obviously didn't know if they wanted to work with me. And the fact that she, obviously now I can see from the show that she went and told everybody that she was a zombie, which is excellent strategy on her part, but it made me feel that she trusted me and wanted to work with me with that information. And also Indy at that point, I felt like if she was the other zombie, she would have just come out and said it, and she didn't. So that really made me trust Indy as well as a human. So yeah, I definitely stand by my comment in the show that basically Charlotte was trying to convince us to become zombies and let her win. And Indy and I were not having that. And I'm really glad that Indy was there and agreed with me. Like we were like this in the zombie game. Like Indy and I were lockstep together. We were strategizing about the game and we felt the same way. And it was really nice to have her as like my co-pilot in that game because we really needed it, as you'll see later on, in order to keep people in our little bubble. But yeah, I basically said to Charlotte, like, I don't want to help you win another game. Like, we will keep you safe and we will look after you and we won't tell people that you're a zombie, but we have to go for a human victory in this game. So that's when we went out to the atrium and we were talking about forming this bubble. So I knew for a fact that Indy and Pasha were going to be in the bubble because I just trusted them the most. And they hadn't shown it in the previous episode, but Allison was the one person who I felt really close to because she used her tip-off in episode 1 to help me try to get the crown. So I really felt like Allison was somebody who I should work with. I really liked her. I just got a good vibe from her and she was helpful. And when I asked her if she was a zombie, she said no, she was a human. And I actually believed her. But you saw in the show, like, Indy said, Allison, I don't know if I trust you. And I understand that because Allison is not the most expressive person. She's a bit stoic. And so it's harder to read her. And in a lot of things, that's excellent because it's not good to be giving away all that information. But in this specific situation, we had less information to work with about whether we could trust her. And at that point, that's when Beex came over, because Beex was one of the last people to get her roll card from the dealer room. And I was actually annoyed that they edited my line to Beex, because Beex came over and I said something like, well, I want everyone in the bubble who's here except Beex. And then after I said that, they put in this big pause in the show and had Beex go like react. And then I said, but it's only because I haven't talked to you yet. I can't be positive. Like, I don't remember this for certain. I have a hard time thinking that I said it exactly that way. Like, I'm almost positive what I said was, everyone who I would like in the bubble is right here except Beex, but that's only because we haven't talked to you yet. Like, I was not trying to exclude her, because my memory of this day is that I wanted to work with Beex, right? Like, Beex was on my team in the first round and we stood next to each other in the opening of the game. Like, I had nothing against Beex at this point, and I felt like she was a really good ally. Like, Allison, Beex, and Bedalia, I really wanted to keep close to me because we were in the minority in that first game. But I guess they showed the clip in the show of Beex saying, like, not only does Ben not trust me, he also doesn't like respect or like trust my skill set. And I've had to like think about that. And I actually think that in some sense she's right, because at least in this zombie game, I did trust her in the beginning, but I was starting, especially as this zombie game went on, I was starting to not trust how she was playing the game, because I didn't like that she was constantly going to other people and having all these side conversations, because I felt like we've come up with this bubble strategy. It's going to guarantee the 4 of us the win. The only thing that can mess it up is if we get convinced by other people to deviate from this plan. So there's actually no need to go talk to anyone else. And I just felt like even from a social game, like, I think Beex's social game was to go talk to as many people and try to be best friends with everybody. But for me, my social game was, in any given episode or game, I can't possibly make a good relationship with every single player. But what I can do is get a small number of players that I give my loyalty to, and I follow through with that loyalty, and I'm solid. And that's what I was trying to do. So I felt like by her going around and having these conversations, it was just going against what my idea of building trust in the game was. So we just had different philosophies, basically, about how to play the social game. But in the end, Beex, I could tell when she said she was a human that she was being genuine. There was a 0% chance in my mind that Pasha or Beex was lying. And so I really considered having a 5-person bubble with Allison in it. But when we said to Allison, I think the 4 people that we trust the most are here, and we're just not sure about you, she really didn't fight it. Like, had she fought it and said, look, no, I'm a human, I swear, I promise I'm a human, then I think I could have easily been persuaded to have a 5-person bubble. but she really didn't fight it. Like, as soon as it was clear that she was maybe not in the bubble, Allison's response was, okay, I'm not in the bubble, but what I'm going to do is go around and try to turn into a zombie and then shake hands with everybody else. And I think like it actually didn't really matter what Allison did in that game, because once we formed our bubble, we were going to win no matter what. But the fact that her attitude after being essentially kicked out of that group was still to help us. And that's one reason why I was so emotional at the end of the game, because if it was me, I would be like, screw you guys, I'm not going to help you. But Allison's response was actually to try to go around and turn other people into zombies. Watching the whole game unfold, knowing in my mind that I was going to win as long as we could keep this bubble together, was really interesting. So my strategy was to basically stand there by the button in the atrium for the whole entire game with Indy, and we wrote down on our sheet of paper when people touched and in what order. So for me, the most critical part of this game was the information about who's touching, because you can't possibly work backwards and try to figure out who the humans and zombies are if you don't collect that information. So I was being really disciplined about standing by the button, and Indy, thank God Indy was with me this game, because Indy agreed, like she was in on the plan. She understood that we had to like get the information and stick together in the bubble. The downside about my strategy was that I missed so much about what everyone else was doing in this game, because I never left the atrium like the whole entire game. But obviously everyone else was having these conversations. And so it was really cool to go back and watch the episode and see what everyone was doing. And I'll get to that in a moment. But like all of the shenanigans that Monfi was doing, I had no idea. It was really, really cool to go back and see that. The other thing I wanted to mention, obviously, as the game played out, is that Bex was giving me a heart attack. Like, I did not understand why she needed to go talk to Scott and talk to these guys. And my memory of it was not that she said to us, look, I'm with you guys 100%. Please don't be nervous. I just want to go hear them out, and I'm going to listen to what they say, and I'm going to come back and tell you. That is not what Bex said from my memory. I remember her not really giving a lot of indication that she was firmly with us and that she was like going off with them. And it wasn't really clear in that moment whether she was about to like team up with them and stab us in the back. I think had she said to me and Indy and Pasha, like, look, guys, I'm with you 100%. Please don't worry. I'm loyal. I'm never going to deviate. I just want to hear them out, and I'll come back and tell you the information. That would have been a totally different story. And I'm really curious if anyone else remembers, but they showed in the show that Amanfi actually told Bex that he was a zombie. Bex never told us that. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm not remembering that correctly, but I do not remember Bex telling our bubble that Amanfi was the other zombie. If I'm wrong about that, and one of the castmates watches this video, please comment and correct me. But yeah, I was obviously like super dramatic. I was really glad that Indy and Pasha, more so Indy, was also yelling at Bex, and not yelling, but saying, Bex, 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 come back, come back. And it wasn't just me, but obviously you saw me being like super dramatic. Like, like I was laughing so hard. I did not remember saying this would be a betrayal at the highest level. Like, it's such a dramatic thing to say. But that is how I am playing games. Like, that's how I am in these competitive situations. I would have acted that same way if this was not being recorded and if this was not for television. I'm just a bit of a dramatic person, but you know, I think it makes the show a bit more interesting. I also really loved like later on in the episode when they showed me like eavesdropping like with Bex and Scott at the door. I didn't remember doing that either. So I was busting out laughing when I saw that on the TV. But yeah, I knew that the game was over from the very beginning. And when I watched the guys touch each other multiple times in round one, I was like, it's done. You know, because the only way that they could have tied us was to copy our strategy. So once they were touching each other multiple times, I knew that they were done for. And it was really just sort of like watching the Titanic sink as the game went on. So I think that's everything I remember about the main match. Obviously the death match was like really interesting. And I think of the 2 episodes so far, this death match out of all of the games is my favorite. Like, it was so tense, it was so competitive. The stakes felt really high. So when the 4 of us were deliberating about who to make the elimination candidate, I remember letting like Bex, Pasha, and Indy talk about what they thought. And by the time it got around to me, they had all 3 mentioned Scott's name. So I didn't even have to really say Scott's name, even though that's the person I wanted to put in. At the start of the game, Scott and Indy were the 2 people that I got really good vibes from, like a good read that they were going to be really clever and good at the games, and I wanted to work with them. But after episode 1 and episode 2, Scott and I had not worked together, and I knew he was clever and smart and ruthless, and he was also teaming up with the guys like Ken and Amani and Bedalia, and obviously that wasn't my strategy. Like, my strategy was to be tight with the women. So Scott was the obvious choice for me. Like, if there was any way to put him in, then that was the best choice. So it was really lucky on my part that all of the other people in the bubble like wanted to put him in. I was really surprised, actually. I thought that Indy and Pasha would have wanted to put in like Bedalia maybe, because they played the game with Scott the first round, but they were very happy to put him in, which was interesting. When Scott was debating who to pick, I knew all along that Allison would have a good chance at being picked, that it was probably going to be Allison or Bedalia that he picked. When he was narrowing it down to Amanfi and Allison, and then Amanfi said, "I'll give you a garnet." And then Scott started to say like, "Okay, yeah, sounds like a deal." In that moment, it was 0% strategy. I just had this emotional, like moral reaction where I said, "Scott, I'll give you one of my garnets if you don't pick Allison." And what I said in the show was 100% true. Like, I did that because I felt like it was the right thing to do. And even to this day, I'm a little bit shocked that I reacted that way, because being such a fan of these shows and a fan of these games and being such a strategist, I really thought that I wouldn't have that kind of emotional reaction, that I would be able to stab people in the back and not blink an eye and not care. And it was really interesting that I felt so compelled in that moment to stick up for her and make that deal. In the end, I actually think that it was a really, really good strategic move. So I know in the Rob Has a Podcast recap with Corey and Zach, they were sort of debating whether that was a good move or not. I actually think it was a really good strategic move, even though it was not meant as a strategic move. And the reason is, you see how we all reacted to Scott. He played ruthlessly in the first episode and put Paul in jail and kept him in there. And then everyone wanted him gone because he was a big threat. Like, he was playing the game aggressively. And so I was nervous that by coming up with this bubble strategy and sort of dominating that game, that people might see me the same way that they saw Scott. So I think by offering my garnet to Allison, I was sort of showing people that, yeah, I might be good at coming up with strategies like Scott was, but I'm also really wanting to work with people. Like, I wanted allies and I needed allies, and I would go the extra mile to help protect and save my allies. So I think, I mean, I don't know, it would be interesting to hear from like other people in the group, like how they perceived that. That's my sense of how people perceived it. And therefore it did actually help me in my social game in order for people maybe to want to work with me a little bit more. In the end, when Scott picked Allison, I was devastated. Like, I was so upset, and they showed me sort of like a bit exasperated. But immediately after that, I went and had a confessional interview, and I was absolutely sobbing. And I'm still a bit unsure why they didn't put at least a few seconds of that in the show. Maybe because they felt like I've already had enough outbursts in the show, and they also wanted it to be Allison's moment, which is totally fair. But there's definitely footage of me like crying so much about the fact that she got picked and that I abandoned her and it was my fault, because I knew how bad it felt to be in the minority on the first day. And we were in the minority together, and she actually tried to help me steal the crown. So then the very next day, for me to be the one in control and for me to put her out of the group again, I felt so horrible. And her going to the death match was just the worst possible scenario. When we had the moments to plan the death match, I remember like that whole day, you could see in the episode, I was so frazzled. Like, even though I had this foolproof strategy, I was so nervous that it was going to go wrong because Bex was going to run off and make a deal with somebody, you know. So I was so nervous and anxious. But I remember when we went into the room to help Allison for the death match, I took a deep breath and I thought to myself, my nervous energy is going to do nothing to help her. Allison is a really calm person. She's not this like emotional, expressive person like I am. And so I remember thinking like, I need to do everything I can to help her. And that includes getting my shit together and basically taking a breath and just calming the fuck down and just explaining this strategy to her in the best way I can. So when they showed the rules of the hidden knots and crosses, I remember everyone reacting to the rules and everyone was like, oh my God, this is so hard. Like, this is so hard. And for me, like, yeah, it's hard. Like, it's a hard game, but the strategy for the game to me came to me instantly. And it's the strategy I told Allison, like finding the pairs of matching symbols and then finding the ones by themselves. And just, if you can just memorize 3 of those and do those on your first 3 moves, you all of a sudden jump out to 9 points and you're going to instantly frazzle your opponent. So I remember like taking that deep breath and I asked Allison, like, do you want me to try to help you? And she was like, yes. So I got the paper and I wrote out a board and I mapped out the strategy. And it was really cool looking at it in the show and being able to remember it. So I was talking to a friend of mine today about it. And she was like, oh, it must be really rewarding to see that moment of you sort of teaching someone, like helping somebody through this concept. And even in this pressure filled moment, like they were able to understand the strategy and the tips that you gave them. And then they absolutely killed it and like succeeded. And I had never thought about it that way until today, because I think that like 100% of the credit goes to Allison for keeping her composure and executing that strategy in the death match. Like, she was so wonderful and so amazing in how she performed. But she has been like really gracious about, you know, telling me like that my tips actually really did help her. And so that was a really nice moment today, actually reflecting on that. Like, I don't want to take the credit away from Allison at all, but it was nice actually that I did get a moment on the show to sort of like be the professor and sort of teach something and help Allison in a way that she obviously like picked it up. And I think that was more her than me, but it was still a really nice moment. Allison's stare in the death match. When I tell you guys, like when we were watching in the lounge and we could see on the TV, there was a moment where the camera went from Scott and then it went to Allison, and Allison's face when she was staring Scott directly in the eyes. It's sort of like in the picture here, but like I honestly remember it being even more than what was in the show and in the picture. We talked about Allison's deathmatch face like that whole day, that whole evening, basically. Like after the deathmatch was over, that's all anyone could talk about. Allison's deathmatch stare was so intimidating. And I remember that people watching in the lounge were completely shook. People were so intimidated that she was in there staring him down. She was composed. She didn't look flustered. She didn't look stressed at all. And that composure, I think, like really unsettled people. And obviously you saw the way the deathmatch turned out. Like Allison kicked ass. Like she did so well. I remember watching it in the lounge and just cheering her on, being so happy and so excited. One of my favorite moments, I think, from this whole day was after the death match was over and Allison had won. Obviously, I came out and gave her a hug, and I was crying. I cried when I watched it on the show last night. It was such a powerful moment because I felt so guilty, and then I felt so happy for her success. So we cried and we had our hug, and then we finished like the filming and everything, and I went back to my dressing room, and it was really late, and I remember kicking off my boots that I'd been wearing all day, and we had a little radio. I had a small like radio in my dressing room, and Ariana Grande Break Free came on the radio, and I just remember like cranking up the radio, and I was like dancing around my dressing room. Like I just felt so happy and excited. I was happy for Allison that she was going to have that moment of performing so well. And obviously, I was really sad for Scott. Like I saw a lot of myself in Scott with the way he approached the game. And so I was definitely really sad for Scott, but I was just excited and happy for Allison. And I also knew that like if Scott had won that game and sent Allison home, my game was in such a bad spot because I would have lost one of my closest allies, and the guys would have retained a lot of power. And Charlotte was obviously working really closely with Scott. And so it's not even like I even had all the women in on my team, right? The fact that Allison sent him home, like it was such a seismic shift in the dynamic of the group that massively benefited me. And so I was just feeling so positive and happy about the direction of the game. Like I'd won a main match. I knew I at least had that. Like even if I got eliminated the next episode, I had a moment where I came up with this strategy. I made the plan. We did it. We won. And my allies were still in the game. Like it was just a really, really good moment. Okay, so let's get to a couple of the things that I was really surprised with when I watched the episode, like things I didn't know about. I had no idea that Charlotte did this interrogation of Allison. Watching it on the show was really interesting because you could see her sort of grilling Allison for information. And obviously Charlotte was trying to figure out if Allison was her fellow zombie. And the way that Allison was answering the questions, I can absolutely understand why Charlotte suspected her, because Allison couldn't really remember what the card looked like. But at the same time, like, I probably wouldn't have either. Like those moments in the dealer room, if you're drawing a card, you're just like really nervous and excited about what your role is going to be. And I don't think most people are memorizing the details on the actual card. But yeah, that interrogation was really interesting. I think it showed how clever Allison, both Allison and Charlotte were, because Allison was picking up on Charlotte's body language and Charlotte was trying to read Allison. It was a really interesting moment. The other thing that I absolutely loved this episode that I had no clue about was all of Amanfi's shenanigans. So everything he did with like the antidote and pretending to buy a new antidote and swapping, like taking Allison's antidote and hiding his garnet and making the promise to Bedalia and swearing like his hand on heart. I didn't see any of that stuff. And going into episode 3, I think I remember that Allison and Bedalia were a bit annoyed at Amanfi. And I couldn't understand why. But now I do. Like now I understand why they felt like he was being devious, because he was. But the thing is, what I want people to remember is that he was a zombie in the game. Like the way that Charlotte played it was really clever, that she basically told everyone she was a zombie because she made it so that she would be really unlikely to get picked for the death match because no one was going to feel screwed over by her. The way Amanfi played it is how the zombie is meant to be played, but it's obviously much more risky to play that way because you're going to lie to people and then people might feel burned by you. But oh my gosh, was it entertaining watching Amanfi run around and have his plan in that episode. And I'm really glad that he did, because if Amanfi didn't play being a zombie that way, the episode would have been so boring because there would have been no story to tell next to the bubble. Like it would have just been the bubble from the very beginning. So I think Amanfi really saved this whole episode from being just boring TV. So I was really grateful for that, simply for that aspect. So a couple of things that they did not show. One was, I said, like, I was sobbing, like crying so much after Allison got picked for the death match. They didn't show that. There was also a moment where I was in the atrium, as I was for this whole entire game. And at some point, Scott said something and he was like walking away. And as he was walking away, I shouted, "I don't trust Scott as far as I can throw his Scottish ass." And then people were like giggling. Like, it was a funny moment. I didn't say it in like a really malicious kind of way. Like, it was in a fun way. But I remember like way after the show was over, I thought about saying that in this episode. And I was like, oh no, like this is bad. Like, I'm this like American guy who's saying, I don't trust Scott as far as I can throw his Scottish ass. It makes it sound like I don't trust him because he's Scottish. And therefore I have this like bias against Scotland. I'm going to get absolutely canceled and like murdered by all these Scottish people. It's going to come across so bad. And I didn't mean it that way. I just meant it as like a silly, fun thing. And Scott didn't take it any kind of way. Like, he thought it was funny. So I was really glad that they didn't put that in the episode. They showed me in my confessional saying, I don't trust Scott as far as I can throw him. But they took out the part where I was shouting at him in the atrium. So yeah, I had a few shenanigans this day, these like emotional outbursts that I think the show is probably trying to figure out, like, which outbursts of Ben do we include in the show and which ones are we going to leave on the cutting room floor? Okay, let's get to the pyramid for episode 2. Bottom of the pyramid, I've put Bedalia. And that's because I think Bedalia was in the crew of the guys who sort of had this strategy to touch everyone. But I think the reason I put him below the other guys in that group is because he reacted really interestingly, I thought, to Amanfi's lie. So I think if it were me, and you could see me in the game, actually, there was a few times where I said to the people in the bubble, if one of you is a zombie, well done. Like, you did well. You played a good game. I'm not going to be mad. But you could tell that Bedalia was actually mad. And I think that it's not really the best way to play this game. Like, I think you have to be a little bit, at least outwardly, forgiving of people. Because if somebody lies to you and you let them know, either by your reaction or what you say, that you're really upset that they've just told a lie, all of a sudden now you're on that person's radar. Even though they lied to you, you're now a red flag for them. So I think in these games, if someone betrays you or lies to you, you have to pretend like you're not bothered and then plot their demise in secrecy so that they don't know that you're actually against them. So next I put Scott because obviously Scott was part of the group of guys that didn't have the best strategy, ended up losing the main match and getting picked for the death match. But yeah, I really saw a lot of myself in Scott. He was really, really clever at the strategy, especially in the first game. He was a really strong competitor. And I think everyone was lucky in a way that he got eliminated, because I think he absolutely could have gone all the way to the end. I put Amanfi next. And I was really torn about where to put Amanfi, because in some senses, I think he played a really good and interesting game. But in other ways, you could tell that it was sort of at a cost, because I think that Amanfi should have known from the second we did the bubble. And I told everyone in the atrium about the bubble. So everyone knew that this bubble was happening. And Amanfi was the only person who knew that there was no zombie in our bubble for 100% certainty, because he was a zombie. So he knew that himself and Charlotte were the zombies. At that point, he should have known that nothing he was doing was going to help him win. And all it was doing was potentially pissing people off. So was it good for the show? Yes. Did it show his ability to lie and strategize and come up with these fun schemes? Yes. And that was incredible. But did it actually help him in the game? No, I don't think it did. So that's why I put Amanfi there. Next is Ken. Ken was also just in the group of guys that basically had, the non-winning strategy. So that's why I've put Ken there. I put Beex next because she almost gave me a heart attack this episode. So obviously she was part of the bubble and she had a win with the main match, but at least in our relationship with me and Bex, cracks were starting to be formed, because obviously by trying to still be in the good graces of the guys, she was definitely going out of my good graces, because I felt like it was a bit of a betrayal that she kept going and talking to them, and wasn't necessarily doing it in a way that benefited the bubble. If she would have come back to us and started telling us everything they said, then that would have been a little bit different. So next I put Pasha. Pasha was a loyal soldier in this game. Like, she was part of the bubble. She stick to the bubble. She was disciplined. So she got her main match win and avoided the death match. So that was all really great. I put Charlotte next because I think the way she played being a zombie was really clever. And obviously she thought about it quite a lot. She came up with a strategy. I think her plan A was to try to win as a zombie. And when Indy and I said, no, we're not going to do that, she pivoted. And she pivoted really quickly and really efficiently to a new strategy that would allow her to not be in the death match this episode. Indy I've put next because she was my partner in crime this episode. Like, if it wasn't for Indy working with me to maintain that bubble, I think we would have lost control. It was really important having her there, and she was with me the whole game. Like, we were thinking together, and I was actually really excited because she was somebody, like I said, from day one, I wanted to work with Indy and Scott. So this was the first chance we got to work together, and I felt that we worked together really well. I really, really respected Indy in the game, thought she was really clever, and I was excited to hopefully keep working with her moving forward. I really debated about who to put at the top of the pyramid, and I actually had Allison at the top a bit earlier. But I decided in the end that the reason I didn't put Allison at the top, despite her amazing deathmatch performance, is that she didn't fight to be in the bubble. And I think in a game of survival, you have to fight. You know, that's like the motto of the Genius, fighting. And I think if Allison would have put up a bigger fight to get in the bubble, then we probably would have expanded the bubble and put her in it. But obviously she had an incredible deathmatch performance. And the reason it was so good is not just that she won, it was in the style in which she won, because she basically scared everyone. She won in such a dominant fashion, in such a composed way, that no one wanted to call her into a death match after that. So it was really impressive. Okay, maybe it's a bit of delusion on my part, but I put myself at the top of the pyramid. I thought I had some really good moments this episode, obviously coming up with the bubble strategy and executing it. Obviously they show a little bit more of my crazy, anxious, like scurrying and trying to control Bex and get her in the bubble, but I wasn't like that the whole day. So, I obviously had a lot more moments where I was just being calm and like talking to people. I was really glad that they showed towards the end of the game, they showed me like skipping in the atrium. I was really glad they showed that, because for the rest of the episode, I look like I'm just a rubber band about to snap. And I was glad that I at least had a moment there of frivolity, because I did enjoy the experience of playing the game. It wasn't all like anxiety provoking. Okay, last is the Kim Kyung-rin Queen of the Episode award. And I really debated this one about who to pick. And in the end, I've gone with two people. So it's my award. I can do what I want. I'm giving it to two people. So I'm giving the Queen of the Episode award to Allison for her incredible deathmatch performance. It was truly inspiring. I think she's a fucking icon. I can't wait for people to be rooting for her as much as I was rooting for her. And I also think that Amani deserved a special mention in this episode. It was really cool to watch how he played this game. And like I said, even though I don't think it necessarily helped him to win the game, and it may not have helped him moving forward, it was just really cool to see what he was capable of. Because I think for a lot of us, like, the worst fear about this experience wasn't necessarily getting eliminated early, but getting eliminated without having the opportunity to show the best of yourself, to show what you're capable of, and to have those genius moments. So anytime I see any of my cast members doing something on screen that is clever and smart and entertaining and fun, like, I'm rooting for them, because I want all of us to have those genius moments. Going into episode 3, I was obviously feeling really good about my situation in the game. Allison came back, Scott was eliminated. I felt like I had good relationships with just about everybody, except I was nervous about Amani, because obviously I offered my Garnet to save Allison, and I did that 100% as a move to help Allison and 0% as a move against Amani. But it would be completely reasonable for him to interpret that as a move against him. So my number one goal for the next episode was to try to smooth things over with him, because I actually really did like Amanfi and I wanted to work with him. And so I just really wanted to make sure he wasn't against me as much as I could. So next episode, they've shown a little bit of a trailer of me running around again, running around the set, being stressed. Next episode is a big one, and I'm really excited for it. I will give you just a glimpse that in my little journal, basically, I wrote that the morning of episode 3, I couldn't sleep. I woke up at 6:30. I wasn't feeling well. I had a headache. My stomach was upset. And I wrote in my journal, I'm praying that today is an easy day where I can just avoid the deathmatch. So we'll leave it at that. I cannot wait for you guys to watch the next episode. It's going to be a fun one. So yeah, thanks for watching the recap. If you have comments, questions, like please throw them down there. Like it's been really fun actually reading the stuff that people have been saying. It's so cool interacting with everyone and also finding the people who are passionate about the show and enjoy watching it just as much as I do. So cool. Take care, and I'll see you next episode.